Hello! Following my radius rod video, I've had many requests for details of the size of the components I use to make the radius rod. So I've drawn them all up on some A4 paper and we'll go through the sizes, and then later we'll show you how they all assemble together, particularly the pivot, as there's a little bit of a knack to it. But first of all, we'll have a look at the size of the components. The first of the components that you need to make is what I call the belly bar, and this bolts up to the two 3/4 tapped UNF holes in the rear of the mainframe, which anchor the radius rod to the back end of the tractor. And it's made out of 50 by 20 steel bar, 10 5/8 of an inch long, with two 3/4 holes at 8 3/4 centres. The belly bars I use myself, I have laser cut out a 20mm plate. It's far easier. And I have these holes here elongated so that when you come to fit it, you've got some adjustment if the holes don't line up exactly. The next component is the belly bar lug that welds into the centre of that, and this is made out of 50 by 30 steel bar. It's 2 3/4 inch long with a 24mm hole bored 2 inch up from the bottom, central side to side, and a grease nipple hole on the side for a 6mm or 1/4 UNF grease nipple, whatever you have to hand. The next component is what I call the V-block. Not that it's V-shaped, but it welds in between the end of the two bars that form the V-shape of the radius rod. Again, it's made from 50 by 30 steel bar, 2 3/4 inch long again, and it just has a 3/4 hole bored centrally in that face. Then we come to the bolt that forms the pivot. This is made from an M24 by 100 bolt, and I machine it down to 3/4 and tap it, thread it rather, 3/4 UNF. I leave 37mm of shank at full size and then thread it so you've got less than 30mm of to cover the piece of steel that this is going to pass through, so that the nut doesn't bottom out on the thread. So that's just a simple lathe job of machining it down and threading it. This doesn't have to be 24mm, it could be 1 inch or 27mm, as long as you've got a decent step there, but you have to adjust the hole in the belly bar lug in the belly bar lug to match it. Then we come to the plate that bolts onto the front axle. This is, I have laser cut out of 12mm thick steel, 2.5 inch wide, 3 3/4 inch high, with 2.8 inch holes, 1 inch apart centrally obviously, and they are 0.775 of an inch up from the bottom edge of the plate. The last component is the little lug that welds onto that and bolts under the front edge of the axle. This I have laser cut out a 10mm plate, 40mm wide, 50mm high, with a 12mm diameter hole, 33.5mm up from the bottom edge. And apart from the bars, which are 35mm steel, that's all the components you need to make a radius rod, obviously apart from the bolts that actually bolt it onto the tractor. So next we'll go to the workshop and have a look at how these all assemble. Once you've made all your components, you can start the welding and assembly of the radius rod. And the first task is to weld the belly bar lug to the belly bar, and that welds on centrally that way and centrally that way. And as you can see there, I've drilled and threaded a hole for a grease nipple. Somewhere I've seen a nipple. Ah, there it is. I'll put that in there so you can give her a grease. Then take the stepped bolt that I described. That goes through there, and the stepped part is 37mm, that's 30mm wide, so when it's on the tractor you've got a bit of movement that way. Then the piece with the 3/4 hole in, that goes on there, and then finally the nut goes on, and these two components and the radius rods all move as one. The idea being that if it wears out, which is unlikely, it's going to take a few years, it's not the main radius rod that wears out like the Nuffield one originally did with the threads in the V-block. The wearing parts are the easy bit to get off and replace, the belly bar and the belly bar lug. And you could just bush it and make a new bolt, or you could make a bigger bolt and just bore it out. But it's going to be a long time before it wears out. When you come to weld it up, a little tip here, I put 2 3mm thick washers on the back, put it through, another 3mm washer, that ties up the longitudinal movement, then put that on, and then tighten this right up. Just tighten that now. Once you've got it tight, just get it square. There you go, that's square. Give the bolt a final tighten. That's now ready to be bolted up underneath the belly of your tractor, because unless you've got a jig like me to make them on, you're going to have to make it in situ on your tractor. So bolt that up with 2 3/4 bolts into the threaded holes on the rear of the main frame. Once that's bolted up, you can bolt the axle plate and the axle plate lug to the axle, and then for the actual radius rods themselves, you'll need 2 47-inch long lengths of 35mm steel bar. Cut the end to a 15-degree angle, offer it up, and it'll come here somewhere, and you can trim the other end and angle it to suit. And then you've got to get underneath the tractor and actually weld it all up in situ. Once you've done the welds on the top, you can take it off and turn it over to do the welds underneath. Once it's all welded up, you can then unbolt this, take the washers out, tighten it all up again, and the bolt and the A-frame will all move as one in this bracket at the back here, and that'll tighten up your steering and your axle movement no end. Happy tractoring everybody.